Hey guys, welcome to the stream. Tyler here, and I am excited to be streaming this week again. So, thank you for joining me, and I hope you have some fun watching us get creative, doing some painting over here, and working on this character we've been working on, which is Sam Hain from the Real Ghostbusters cartoon. We're doing a little redesign spin, and if you haven't seen how we got here, feel free to go back and watch some of those recordings on the live section of YouTube. Everything's recorded there, so you can check that out. Otherwise, I feel like we should just get rolling here. Had to start a little late today because OBS needed to update it. It was acting strange, so I had to install the new version, but I think we're good to go. Hopefully, the audio is sounding good, and we're just ready to rock and roll. Hey, how's it going? Welcome in. So I guess maybe before we dive into working on this guy again, which I have some fun things that I want to do right off the bat with him, I'll just share a little sneak peek at another little design I've been working on here. This is a knight character that I'm actually messing with some of the some of the color balance right now. It's probably looking better without the blue filter on it. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to post that one soon. And I'll try to share some process images as well so you guys can kind of see how that came together. But otherwise, let's get back to our buddy here. And so the idea I had was, we got a lot of this nice empty space down here with his robe, and I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool if maybe there was some stitching and some panels down here. He's got kind of a little bit of like a scarecrowy vibe, and I feel like that kind of fits the vibe. So let's try that. Let's add some of that detail. All right, there's the base. Connect a new layer to play around with this idea. And I'm not sure how loud I want these to be or how numerous they should be, but let's doodle for a minute. And this is an example of how sometimes you may have an idea for a detail that was not in the original drawing, and sometimes you just got to go for it. And I'm kind of making them squares to start with, but they may not end up being squares. We want them to feel a little haphazard because we don't want it to look like a nice, comfy granny's quilt, right? It's got to feel a little, a little chaotic, a little villainous. Let's give this a flip, refresh our brain on the whole thing. Maybe we want to go with a bigger. Well, I mean, if we're trying to be sensitive to ratios and things, we'd probably want to put more patches up toward the top here and then go for some bigger ones down here. Feel like our shadow darkness is a little inconsistent. We're a little darker here, and I feel like we need some of that over here. What's going on with the shadow layers? Let's scope that out for a second. Okay. where I think we're going triple shadows here. Yeah, maybe let me just get in here and hit this a little harder. Are you working on anything cool over there? You got any creative projects going? That's funny. I just been working on that other image I showed you that's kind of has a darker sort of ambience to it, and this scene's going to get turned down as well, but I sort of feel like my eyes are calibrated to darker values right now, like just a different kind of lighting thing. But you know what? Maybe my eyes are a little more tuned at the moment because I've been rendering a lot. I'm just seeing some opportunities to push some of this stuff. Okay, so back to the. I feel like that's reading a little better, although I don't love some of the interaction there. It's a little messy. We can clean that up when we merge things, but I'm going to go back to those stitched panels, and I think I like that arrangement. It's pretty creepy. So let's come in here and give these some actual stitches. And while we're at it, we can probably create a little bit of a less square quality to them. Currently working on the game brand logo and doing research about the funding in Australia. Happy to hear your suggestions and ideas. You're working on game brand logo. Oh, cool. So what is that, like an NDA thing, or are you able to share what game brand that's for? And now I think we can probably also maybe change the coloration a little bit on some of these panels, but I'm just kind of getting these stitches and separations in first. Something you can, it's a very subtle detail, but when you have stitching on something, seams and stuff, you want to think a little bit about the tension that happens at those places. It's not always going to be the same or even throughout, but it can really help to sell the effect. Think about some of the little wrinkles and folds and things that can happen where there's tension going on. Here, I'm just using a little bit of a smudge to imply a little pulling quality between these. And honestly, we're being really rough about it, but I kind of like the chaos that generates. It doesn't feel too perfect, and this guy certainly doesn't want to feel perfect. If we were doing some kind of a, Skynet mech or something robot, then maybe we'd have to be a lot more precise, but definitely not here. I maybe we could even do it on his shirts. Maybe. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see how we like it down here first. I am thinking it's going pretty well. I'm liking it more with this edition, but I need to kind of see it all in place before I can tell if we should be uh, adding more elsewhere. Maybe that's one piece there. That's probably fine. Maybe curve that up a little bit. So all the stuff I'm doing here is all on the kind of like the flats layers, the color layers. So it's all underneath the lighting. So that way we don't have to mess with any of that stuff. It's not really, these things are superficial details. They're very thin and they won't really produce a lot of form. They won't really change a lot of the lighting going on. So that means it's pretty safe to put it down there on the flats. And if I needed to, I could just fudge a little bit of shadow right here on this pass and it wouldn't be a big deal. A little few extra stitches there. And go here. It's a game logo. Your team is creating a third-person shooting game involving secret intelligence, similar to Tom Clancy's Division and Ghost Recon. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, man, logos are fun to design, but I feel like they're deceptively simple. I always get in there and I have trouble making concrete decisions. I've got some pretty great graphic designer friends that, well, their work reminds me why I'm not a graphic designer. They really do an amazing job. I think I just don't have the patience to really tinker with certainly typography is not my thing. I can browse some fonts and pick an appropriate font, but designing typeface and things like that, man, my brain melts a little bit. Okay, so there's some stitch patchwork stuff going on, and now I want to see about making a few of these different in value slash color. All right, just around, and I don't know if it matters really what specific value and color yet. But it definitely needs to be loud enough to not look like lighting. It needs to look like it is different cloth. And maybe we want to vary this. I'm just doing it kind of one way right now, but Mm, need a steadier hand for this. Maybe there's a darker one over here. And maybe we get one more right here. Okay, so now we can select these and we can do maybe something a little weird with one of them. Like maybe one of them's green. Is that too weird? I think it might let draw your attention too much. Let's turn down the opacity. I just want it to be. Yeah, that might be enough, honestly. I don't know that I want it to be super loud. I just wanted there to be something a little bit extra about his robe there. So that seems cool. Do want to play with it on the shirt and see how that looks. First, we have to find the layer for the shirt. Did I call it? No, the vest is that piece. Mm, this might be one of those unnamed layers. Rutro, where is it? Well, we're gonna name it after I find it. That's for sure. Wait, was that it? No. Wow, classic. It's totally missing. Oh, it's because it is included in the robe. Well, it makes sense. They're very similar in color, aren't they? Okay. Suppose that makes our job a little easier. Now, where does this want to be? Do we do like it's kind of a weird seam along the arm here? That's kind of cool. Maybe there was a seam here. We'll have to add some tension lines here as well. A little bit of pulling here and there, and there and here. That's a straight Bob Ross quote right there. He has so many quotables, it's ridiculous. Okay. Yeah, that looks just a little bit more interesting, right? I really like how that looks right there. That looks super cool. Um cool. What's next here? I feel like that vest is a little too clean. Let's dirty the vest up a little bit. And I've got just the brush for that here somewhere under my grunge category. Let's try faster. Ooh. Oh, yeah, look at that. Oh, yeah, there we go. See, he was enjoying some hot cocoa and he spilled it on himself, so now he has a little bit of extra character to his vest. Although it's rather green looking, so maybe it was not cocoa, maybe it was something a little more sinister. Ooh. Oh. Sometimes you just want to see what happens when you go too far. And I'm kind of liking too far. Yeah. Wow, look at how messy he is. You need to just relax, dude. You're getting real crazy here. All right, good, better. Maybe the vest wants to be a little darker. Yeah, yeah, there we go. And let's take a look at that cape. Hmm. Questioning my decisions. Okay, you know what? We're gonna leave it, but do you think I want to go a little bit darker with it? And do we want to go more saturated with it? Maybe just a little bit more saturated. Okay. Uh, let's put in some of the background tones because I'm trying to now calibrate the lighting of the scene, and it's difficult to do without having that stuff in there. So let's get a cloud brush. Okay, well that is a cloud brush. Man, that's a terrible cloud brush. That's better. That's nice. That's almost too nice. I just wanted to block something in without it looking completely textureless. So that's the idea here. Let's get, I mean, some of this at the top can be. But as we get down here, now all these guys we've done so far, and we haven't really done any sort of environment. So I'm not going to start on this guy, but we have always tried to be as realistic about the lighting as we can, even if it's simple. So we're gonna try to think about ambience here. I wonder, does this want to just get blurred up in front? Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, probably. And then maybe we go with like a round soft to kill a little bit of this contrast going on. And let's see. He's got lighting. Probably do. Hmm. Having to make choices about lighting now, and maybe we'll go darker here. Hmm. We could dim this down here a little bit. I do want you to be looking up at his head, so I don't want to put too much competing light down here. All right, that's feeling like it's getting there. Now that cloud brush I had, where was that one? The nice one. I think it was this one. I did like a little bit of this sort of smokiness going on behind him. When you don't know what to do with a character background, just go atmospheric and throw some cloud stuff in there, some fog, some mist, some rocks. It sounds really cheesy, but honestly, if you paint it well, it can work pretty good. We've got our Spindrift peach strawberry tonight. Not sponsored. Delicious either way. It would be more delicious if I was sponsored, though. It would taste 10 times as good. All right. What do we want to do next? We got some atmosphere. I'm getting a sense for the lighting. Um, we could put in a key light in here. But alternatively, we could just have the front be a little more ambient and just put a rim light in. Let's see what that looks like. So we go a little darker with him here. Okay, yeah. So probably what we want to do is put in some reflections now. Is seeming like it's the right time to do that. I've actually got a little bit there already. Um, okay, I'm just putting in a little bit of very subtle diffuse highlights here, just to kind of complete the halftones a little bit, give a little focus to these shapes. This is sort of the quick way to establish some volumes better. It is a little bit of a hack, but it works. It works okay. And then we can tune this. Obviously, it's on its own layer, so we can adjust it. Okay, so you can see kind of quick diffused lighting there, and we can tune that. So let's dial that in. Good. Let's label this. And now, what is this layer here? Is there anything on this? There is something on this. Uh-oh, I don't know what's on this layer. Let's see if we move it around, can we tell? All right, I guess I'm deleting that layer. How about this layer? There's nothing on this layer. That layer's gone. If you're working on something, remember to save your work. Okay. Yeah, this is our non-metallic highlights. Oops. And I'm specifically talking about, well, there we go. Specular reflections here, which can really add some nice realism to these materials. And the cool thing about pumpkins is that they're kind of shiny. And they have a definite sort of sheen to them. So we don't want to go crazy because it doesn't want to look wet or metallic, but we definitely want to give it some of that sort of a leathery sheen going on. So So you kind of see in grayscale there how we're working up some of those brighter spots. And as I always say, if you spend a little bit more time on the head of the focal point, the face, all that stuff, then it kind of elevates the whole image, sets the tone, sets the quality bar immediately to a higher degree. So you really want to try and knock people out with the focal point. It's not a reason to be sloppy in other parts, but when you've got to prioritize your time in some way because you don't have infinite time, you know where to put that time, right? I'm still not totally sold on this guy's mouth. This is a little wild, but we might be able to finesse it toward the end there. Now the leaves, I feel like do we I'm just gonna do a test here, highlight on these. Does this look weird? I think the leaves are very dry, right? So I don't know that we're gonna get I don't think we're gonna get much reflection on those. So I guess we'll move into our our stem here, which I imagine that this would have a little bit of shine to it, just a little bit. It can help to think about where you think the surface is tighter or that like smoother, really. But when we're talking about organics, I think of tightness, like if you have your hand like this, um, there's a lot of wrinkles and stuff on your fingers, and then when you bend them like this and you pull the skin tight, you get stronger reflections on those bony spots because they're smoother, right? Um, so when you're looking at something like a twisting root, you can kind of think about where are the knuckles pulled tight, and those are places where you might have a little extra speck. Here in North America, we're coming up on autumn, and I guess it's weirdly fitting to bring in the new season with a pumpkin guy. I mean, it would have been more perfect to do him literally on like the month of October, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Close enough. Man, these pumpkin shapes are so silly. I love them. Hmm. Okay. Yep. That looks all right to me. Tonight we're listening to I'm listening to some vaporwave. You guys can't hear it because it's copyright, but it's like music that's intended to sound kind of like lo-fi, like uh, convenience store music. It's or elevator music. It's you guys know vaporwave probably. It's it's a very chill vibe. It's also a little kind of creepy in some ways. I feel like chill and creepy are like two fun elements in contrast. Like vaporwave has that sort of a lo-fi, kind of distant, bad radio speaker, loudspeaker kind of thing going on, or overhead music system kind of vibe. I feel like this kind of music would go really well in like a backrooms game. If you guys know the backrooms stuff, you'd have to be very like minimalistic about it, but I think that could be cool. I kind of like kind of minimalistic settings that are just very atmospheric and there's a lot of subtlety and nuance. Like if you were to make a game where it was like hyper realistic and you were in sort of like an abandoned, or I guess not abandoned, but like you were in um like a convenience store or like a gas station after hours or like the graveyard shift, and it was just like super atmospheric and there were just like kind of like weird spooky things happening in subtle ways. I really like that stuff. It's not loud and over the top. Just kind of gets to you with the subtle psychological elements. And with the tech these days, I mean, just how real stuff can look, man, you can really get some great immersion going on. Like, you try to create an immersive experience 20 years ago, you're working with like low bit graphics and stuff. You can do it certainly, but it's a little harder to create that type of experience when you don't have the realism. But now you can make something as simple as like a gas station at night really compelling, right? Which is super cool. It starts to basically take on the same creative freedom or range that movies have. But I have a lot of ideas on potential video games and stuff, all kinds of different genres, and I try to write them down in a Google Doc so I don't forget about them. Maybe one day I'll find an opportunity to mess with that stuff. Never know. Okay, so we got some pumpkin. That's just too heavy right there. Let's kill that. Yeah, I like the spec on the pumpkins for the most part. I feel like that looks pretty good. I got a little bit on some of the stems. I guess we can maybe spice that up a little bit in a couple spots. Um, but maybe what we should do is look at these neck pendants because they look woefully simple and under addressed. But the question is, oh, there they are right there. Let's do neck. Uh, I guess that's like I'll call it a cloak clasp. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, now I'm just going to find some really basic sort of noise to stick on here so that it's not looking too simple. Yeah, okay. That's good. Let's rasterize that down. And now that is intended to feel metallic, so we should introduce some metallic highlights, which I guess we can start to do that everywhere. Man, what happened there? That's a bummer. It's like a shifted shadow edge or something. Is that? No, that's just that one spot there. Interesting. Okay, we'll have to figure that out later. Metallic highlights though. So for this, we're gonna do a color dodge layer. And I'm gonna just try and hit. Well, I could use a textured brush here to bring a little bit of extra texture to this. But I want to be careful that it's not too loud. This textured brush is nice, but one of the downsides is that it's a little hard to get it to place the detail in a very specific spot. There's a little bit of randomness, which again is kind of its strength and its weakness. So we have to kind of try to work with it here. So for like highlighting these little edges here, that would not be a good brush because we'd be here for ages trying to get it to adhere to those little spots. But what you'll notice, hopefully, is that these shapes, which felt really kind of simple a moment ago, with a little bit of micro texture and some highlights, look a lot different, right? They look a lot more believable, which is super cool. Did we put a texture on the cloak? We did. Okay, we got that. Okay, let's continue with some of the metallic highlights elsewhere. We've got these guys, which these guys also don't have a texture, and these are, we could just call these the belt uh coins, sure. And then we'll just do the same pattern overlay. Let's turn that down a little bit. Rasterize, paint some highlights. Maybe on these I'll just opt for the soft brush. They're pretty thin. There's not a lot of surface area to play with here. What might be kind of cool though is to do a little bit of like a reverse highlight. Let's see if we can kind of make this work. Yeah, I like that. Let's do that. It gives him a little bit of like a concave quality, which I think makes him a little more interesting to look at. Um, is that okay? So I think the only metallic things left are the scythe blade and the end of the handle, and then we've got all the hourglasses. Let's hit these hourglasses. These also need a little bit of texture, don't they? Where is that? Okay, hourglasses. Did I spell that right? I spelled it hour classes. Okay. Pattern overlay. Ooh, actually, that's not looking too bad. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go with that. Sometimes you just stumble upon a, a pattern that just kind of works. Yeah, nice. All right, pause for a drink. Okay. Where did our metallics go? Right here. Now, something you can do is my brush here has a kind of a hard and soft edge, so I can kind of dial in an edge here if I need it. But there's nothing stopping you from using the lasso tool to create a shape as well. If you want to create a really hard edge, right, you can create a nice little diamondy looking highlight there. Trying to think of just kind of the quality of this gold that I want to create. If I want it to be like super reflective. Let's see, is that something that kind of works about that is that they want to this one anyway wants to feel in front of the character, and bringing some highlights like that to it does help it stand off. So that might be the right call. Maybe the ones in the back we don't go quite as heavy with it. I don't know. We'll have to play with that when we get there. Yeah, I have to be careful not to paint on the non-gold parts. We're not working with a mask here, so now notice I'm not painting highlights on both sides of this diamond, right? Because we're going to lose the value change there, that planar change. So like everything you do should be in an effort to help the planes read. Because the whole thing we're fighting against here is that we're trying to convey 3D forms on a 2D surface. We're trying to use kind of every trick we can to help you feel those forms. And funny enough, sometimes the way to do that is to put 3D forms next to really flat looking forms. Sometimes that's your only way to go further, is to give us a literal flat element to compare the 3D elements against. That's some advanced stuff going on there that maybe for some future content on the channel we can explore some of those ideas. Yeah, in terms of the Ghostbusters stuff, I feel like we maybe only have one more character that immediately comes to mind for doing a redesign of, just in terms of characters that people sort of remember well from the cartoon series. I won't spoil which one it is yet, but For those familiar with the series, you may be able to guess which one it is. But then after that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we continue or if we move on to maybe something else, some other subject matter. Okay, yeah, that's feeling pretty good. Put a little bit there. And these are kind of off in the distance, so I'm not as worried about having ultra precision on these ones. I just need a little hint. I was thinking about opening my freelance schedule again, but I just started thinking about it more, and it's like, gosh, I just really don't have the time. I wish I could. If I do that, then I I mean, obviously the monetary aspect is nice, but that stuff typically I can't show that stuff, right? So I can't do it on stream, and I can't post it to socials for potentially a long time. I mean, I did some freelance. I do it here and there very lightly, depending on what the person needs. I have to be very careful about it. But I did do a small project for somebody a couple months ago, and actually no, it was actually like 3 or 4 months ago at this point, and still can't show the work, right? Because it's still not public stuff, and so that's the tricky part about it is that you're not really getting any content out of it until maybe a long time after it's gone live or whatever. So I'm always a little careful about that. Now, for the right project, if it's like some kind of a contract thing, or I can kind of figure stuff out. But in terms of like random freelance, just kind of like jamming it in without any kind of more significant um, What am I trying to say? Without any kind of significant, dedicated time to it. It's something that I have to be careful about. So I'm just trying some specularity on this shirt to see if I like it. I don't actually think I like it too much. Yeah, it's very rare that you would come across a client that is okay with you streaming uh, the work as it's being done. Like it's very unusual to have that happen. It have to be. It's going to probably be part of something that's not really a product, right? Like maybe it's more of like a. I don't even know. So I think I like just a little bit of shine to this because I'm trying to distinguish this vest from the robe here, and the robe wants to feel, I think, very diffused, very non-specular, and I don't want all the materials to feel that way. I want some material diversity. So I like that this vest here feels a little more like leather, so we get some of that sheen, some of that Charlie sheen on this vest here. I want to do the highlights on that scythe blade, but it's going to be so fun that I'm sort of savoring the anticipation. Let's kind of do some of these a little more tedious elements first, especially because if you're a little fresher, then you can usually handle some of this tedium a little easier. And then when you get a little fatigued, then you can maybe spice it up with some of the more exciting bits. These are all like little hacks to get a little more done. So yeah, if we see that, we can see, okay, yeah, that's maybe starting to give us a little bit of that leathery quality there. And there's also different kinds of leather, but when we're talking about distinguishing materials, I like to use leather that is a little bit shiny like this so that it has good contrast against other more obviously different materials like different kinds of cloth, different kinds of linen, and I mean, there's some things that would be obviously very different, like velvet, right? But they were also a little limited because this guy wants to feel kind of ancient. So, we're not going to be putting like pleather or something on this guy, or like, rubberized materials, or like all these things that feel kind of modern or futuristic. Those are all kind of off the table. So, for material variety, we've got kind of like natural leather, we've got different kinds of cloth, different kinds of metal, obviously his skin, leaves, pumpkins. Like, yeah, there's plenty of things you can go for, but you just want to be kind of cautious about introducing stuff that just feels like it's sort of out of theme or potentially kind of anachronistic. And then we've got all the hourglass glass to put on here as well, which is going to be pretty fun. All right, it's feeling pretty leathery. So we'll turn that on and off. You guys can kind of see. So this is like some kind of cloth, and then boom, leather. And it's really subtle, right? Like there's not a lot here. It's very metered. It's very strained, and yet changes the way the material feels pretty dramatically. So this is why I typically recommend that artists sort of address reflectivity on surfaces as a pass of its own, just because of how sensitive the things are. Now, if you're not doing realism, then I suppose it doesn't matter. But if you're striving for realistic materials, just you either have to just be very, very careful and precise, or you can kind of dial it in as its own pass so that you can fiddle with it a little bit more. It's really easy to go overboard with some of this stuff. Now this stuff down here, I think it wants to stay dry, in contrast to the leather here. The cape is in question. The cape is in question. I'm gonna just kind of play with a little bit of spec on it and just see what I think. If I like, if I like a little bit of shininess to it or not. This would imply that the cape is also kind of like a leather. Yeah, I think that looks nice. It kind of makes the cape feel a little heavier. Gives it a little bit of weight. Just a chance to show a little bit of extra definition there. And so I guess I'll lean into it a little heavier here. And then we'll just sprinkle a little bit on this front edge over here. Do I want to do it on this? Maybe this wants to also be like a leathery built. I know it feels like I'm kind of overusing leather now, but I'm liking the way it looks, and the belt's kind of a small element, so I think we're fine. Yeah, and I think people just expect the belt to be leather, right? It just feels correct. And probably the same with this pouch as well, where he keeps his fun size Snicker bars for when he gets hungry. Oh, might have went a little overboard. All right, now the wood. This is a question here too. Like, does the wood want to feel a little shiny? Let's see. Let's find out. certainly got some fun texture work going on this thing. Do you think I like a little bit of this shine on here? It's it gives it kind of an oiliness that I think feels well handled. But we're not doing like a lacquered finish. Notice it's like pretty restrained. It should feel more like his, skin oils soaking into the wood versus somebody putting like a lacquer finish on it or something. It would just it would be too nice for this guy, right? Like he wants to cause some uh cause some chaos with this weapon of his, and if it was all nice and shiny, it wouldn't really tell that story. So, all right. Is it time for I think we can do a little bit of spec on the skin. Here again, I'm going to be careful because I don't want the skin to look wet or too sweaty. I just want to give a little bit. I mean, you guys who've painted faces before, you'll know what I'm talking about with restrained specularity. You put that little speck on the wrong spot on the nose, and suddenly the face looks like a disaster. It's wild how sensitive we are to that stuff. But so we can kind of see, yeah, just like a little, we're getting a little hint of just a little bit of that shine there. And now here, I think my strategy is going to be to sort of ride this edge here. When you're placing these highlights, you of course want to think about the position of the lights and and the material and how that's going to, you know, dictate strength and all this stuff. But you also want to think about the apex of the form and where the highlight is going to serve the volume best. Let's maybe break that highlight up a little bit. Okay, yep. Do we put a little bit here? Oh, yeah, that's nice. Okay. And also, specularity like this, subtle spec, is one of those things where um, you don't really appreciate what it's doing until you turn it off and then you turn it back on again and you're like, wow, yeah, like how did I think it didn't need that? Like it's weird. So I guess that's another reason why I like to do it on a layer. I can really evaluate its impact and maybe turn it down a little bit if I got a little aggressive. And it's very easy to overdo it with this stuff. What you don't want to do is start piling contrast into your image everywhere. Like that is a recipe for disaster. As soon as you lose control of the contrast in your image, It means you're probably going to be re-rendering a lot of stuff. Probably have to knock the whole image back and then start pulling stuff out again. There's some workflows for that. I don't know if it's something that's interesting enough to show on the channel here, but yeah, needless to say, I think it's just easier if you are just careful about controlling contrast as you go versus having to make big corrective measures later. Because the other thing about trying to post process things to be correct is um, it's it's damaging to the piece. Like when you adjust levels, when you expand levels and you expand value range, when you expand the color range, um, Photoshop is inventing data that isn't there. So, it's always going to be better if you are the one placing that information manually as you go versus having Photoshop kind of just guesstimate for you. It's, I think, totally fine to use it, and it can be very, very successful when used properly, but there's a limit to how far I'll go with that stuff. Because yeah, at just some point it just sort of starts to really damage the value structure. Okay, cool. I think that looks good for the skin spec. Again, we'll turn that on and off. You guys kind of see the effect that that's having. Again, kind of making things feel a little bit more realistic. Like we can reach out, touch it, imagine how it would feel. I guess these roots probably want a little bit of that as well. I don't know. I have the best image in my mind of how shiny a root might be, but I imagine it's sort of fleshy and it is kind of an extension of his body. So we can kind of borrow from what we did on his arms and do it a little bit here as well. Yeah, that looks good. And give this little guy peeking out a little highlight. Most materials have some combination of diffuse and specular highlight. So when you're looking at something and you're thinking, should I put a highlight on it? The answer most times is actually yes. Um, but the key thing in there is, what does that highlight look like? It might actually be very, very subtle. For this, I'm just using a normal layer. I'm just using white because we have neutral lighting in the scene. I'm gonna have to tune up all these shadows underneath the guy. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about kind of like what kind of glowing effects we're going to have for this, and I think it's going to be pretty subtle, to be honest. I don't want to go for anything too over the top. Um, I kind of like the the kind of a little bit more grounded quality the images have, with a little less special effects going on. I think part of the fun of this is that we're taking something that's from a cartoon and we're trying to make it seem like it could be a little bit more realistic, a little more immersive. I mean, as realistic as a pumpkin headed person can be, but it's a little bit more immersive than something that's like really simple and cartoony, or something that might be filled with fantastical magic and glowing things everywhere. So I'm going to be a little bit light about it, in the spirit of that sort of realistic immersion that I'm trying to create. Hopefully, it'll be clear when we get to that phase. Man, that texture did a lot of cool work there, didn't it? That little overlay we put on there. And these are not hard to create. I think a large portion of them I've just found online in various places, but there's definitely a handful that I've made myself as well. And you really just have to know how to make a tiling texture, and that's not that hard. Once you know that, you can turn anything really into pattern you can use in the way that I've been showing it here. Super helpful for adding some of that micro texture that would just otherwise be a pain to create, um, but feels missing when we don't have it. So there we go. Okay, let's go ahead and let's. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I want to make this a little bit darker, even still at the top here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And do we want to colorize the background a little bit? Maybe we let's see what we can do here. Well, no. Well, no, I think I think gray is the right choice. I think gray is the right choice. Maybe a little bit warm. I don't know. I'm flip flopping a little bit here. Oh, maybe a little bit cool. Okay, yeah, we'll just go just ever so slightly cool. Cool story, bro, to offset the warmness of the character here. Let's bring in a soft light. Um, well, let's bring in some shadow from below using a soft light blending mode so that we get some gradation across the character. And for that, we'll do that on the shadow layer. And we'll do it. Well, we'll do it in the shadow layer group rather, and then we'll do it as its own layer. I'm just going to use a gradient here to pull black from the bottom, and I'll just use opacity to dial this in. Essentially, I'm trying to get us to be feeling the light coming more from on top here. And I'll selectively erase, or rather, I'll paint black into the mask to bring a little bit of the light back on some of this stuff down here, where the light might be kind of coming down and hitting the floor, hitting the front of his robe here. So we can kind of see the effect going on there. Check it in grayscale. And I think I may want to bring the lightness down, or the ambience, a little bit more. I'm looking at this over on OBS because I just get a better sense of the image when I'm looking at it on another screen, weirdly enough. Okay, let's try that. I do think I'm looking at the ground too much still, so let's darken this a little bit more here. Corners are killing me. Okay, there we go. All right, we're starting to dial it in. Now, something you can do. I'm in order to lower the ambience on him. I've got. Well, I guess I can show you here. I know this layer stack's a mess. You're probably not going to be able to tell what's going on, but the green layers are all of the flats. Okay, and to lower the ambience, because the flats they represent some amount of light hitting the form, right? They're like the base level of lighting hitting the form is defined by all these flats. So if I want to reduce the ambience in the scene, all I need to do is just use hue saturation connected to this group of flats and just bring down the lightness of all the flats. So I have control over it there. And the other thing I can do is I can bring in, let's say, like a color balance, once again connected to the flats here. And we could, if we wanted to control the color of the ambience in the scene, I could simply add a little bit of color balance. You see now there's a sense of a kind of greenish blue cast to the lighting, or I can make it feel like it's got warmer light. And I'm just hitting all the flats together. And it's just an easy way for you to kind of adjust things. Now, I'm not going to do color balance because I like the neutral ambience here. But in terms of brightness, though, you can see this is what we started with, which is a great way to start your image because you can see things clearly when they're very fully lit. But when we try to bring it into a sort of atmospheric, volumetric scene like this, everything being bright like that isn't necessarily the right move. So we're going to bring this in, and then we're going to bring the rim light in, which will kind of help bring a lot more volume to the forms. But the point there is that I'm thinking about the plan and I'm making sure that my lighting is not going to compete with each other. If the front is super bright and there's a bright rim light, those two things really fight against each other, right? You can have two bright lights and change the color of the bright of the two lights to still make that work a little bit, but it's still not as powerful as if you have very different intensities to the different lights in your scene. So something to think about. If you're going to use a rim light, don't have your front lighting fight with it. It's going to make things look flat. Okay, so what were we doing? We were doing metallic highlights on the side here. That's going to be a fun one, isn't it? All right, let's jump in there. Let's start making it happen. Now I have to think for a moment here. What might be helpful is if I have actually. Let's see. Let me see what I'm working with here. I think we're working outside, so I want to isolate this to the character's shape. So let's do that and make sure we didn't lose anything that we had. No, we didn't. Okay, good. Okay, so now I can kind of paint broadly if I want to. So I could bring in maybe some kind of bigger highlights if I want to do that. Gotta be careful about patterns being evident. And we want to think about what kind of metal we want this to look like because just saying it's shiny metal is not helpful. It's like, well, is it ancient bronze? Is it copper? Is it polished? There's all these things we have to think about. And this is where a reference could help you. Um, I'm not going to pull up reference because I think I have a good idea of what I want to do. But if you don't, then a reference is going to be your friend here. Let's see. I got to just kind of figure out intensity levels. I guess we sort of did. It's interesting. I wonder if we did a little bit of a switcheroo there, didn't we? Let's see. Let me see how this is gonna. Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna use the old counter corner trick. So I can dial in a nice little highlight on this top edge here. If you've ever rendered like weapon concepts, you'll uh, you'll be familiar with trying to get highlights to read on surfaces to show texture, but also show shape, right? Something kind of good to practice that is do like a stylized weapon, like something from like Warcraft, where everything's kind of big and chunky, because it'll really help you focus on the shapes, right? Like the shapes are really loud, so you can really think about, okay, how do I get this shape to read? Versus something that's maybe a little bit more realistic, little more nuanced. It might be a little harder to see what you're supposed to be doing to get it to work. You can see I'm kind of sneaking up on the highlights here, which and I kind of like to do that to just see if the material is reading the way I want. We'll come in and we'll do some inner stuff in a moment, but I want to hit these edges first, get the edges feeling good. And I'm contemplating inner forms if this wants to feel completely flat, or if there's something clever we want to do with uh with the form here, like we can, imply that there's a little bit of like a weird little bevel to this form. Could be kind of cool, give it a little bit of volume. It's not something we planned in the drawing really, but now we have an opportunity to do things with a lot of subtlety, and so these little tiny sort of form indications here can be cool. Then I also want to make sure I'm not stomping on the shadows, because those are critical to read the thin but important volume of this object. Oops. Saving the skull for last because that's actually going to be easier than this blade. It kind of reminds me of way back in the day when I did some stage acting and stuff. I always talk about how the really loud parts, the really sort of abrasive roles, are easier to act because it's just a very blatant emotion. There's like a lack of sort of subtlety to it. But you play the character who has this really sort of complex, subtle personality, and man, that's a lot more challenging to pull off than the guy who's just like the angry guy or the sad guy or what where it's just some very like simple emotion you have to convey. You can kind of see we're starting to get some interesting specular effects happening. And I might sort of lean into a little bit more form. Let's just bring in a little bit of highlight on this edge, and we'll contour it. And I'm gonna try to hit one area of this with a harder highlight, but I'm working up to that. The harder parts of an image, you kind of do the parts that are obvious to you first, and then if you put those in place, the harder parts will start to sort of speak to you, right? Hopefully, you'll get a clue. Nope, I don't like that. Okay, all good. Okay, let's see. Big highlight somewhere. Let's see where we want to put that. I can put it across there. That's a little too flattening. What if we go this way with it? Does that feel? Nope, that's also flattening. Okay. All right, I think the answer is that it wants to be kind of on the end here. So, maybe we do another one? Oh, yeah, that's nice. And maybe can I get away with a little heavier hit right there? We carry that up right through here. Nope, too loud, too loud. Pull it back. Retreat. Yeah, we're losing a little bit of that. Um, that subtlety that I wanted. Yeah, we don't want to be just looking at only one part of the blade, right? We want to be able to see the whole blade. And if one part gets too loud, it's going to start to kill it. Oh, I don't mind a little extra up here, though. That's kind of cool. All right. Oh, we got to do this down here. Let's do this. This is going to be pretty easy. Whoa, that was intense. I'm going to zoom in really close for this one. And I'm going to go use my square brush for this. It's going to be a little heavy, but just try to control myself. And maybe we hit this corner with a little bit of highlight too. Why not? Why not? Mmm, tasty. I love it. Can metal be tasty? Yeah, probably not, but a nice looking render can be tasty, I would argue. Now, do we go? Maybe we go textured with this first. Let's see. I do want there to be some nice metally textures going on with this skull. But it's kind of small, and that's working against us because this brush wants to be big. May have mentioned this on the channel before, but brushes, you got to think about the fact that they have a resolution. Like whatever little swatch that they're based on has a dimension to it in pixels. And if you are trying to use the brush at a size smaller than that swatch, you're not really going to be letting that brush breathe properly. It's going to be you're going to be suffocating your brush. It will be starved for pixels. And then it will look bad and then you will be sad. So try and think a little bit about that. All right, here we have to bring in the big guns. I'm using the AO brush because I need to hit some of this stuff a little harder. Let's get a couple glistening teeth. Maybe this guy was a pirate in life and he had a few shiny gold teeth. No, just kidding. This is a skull made of, it's a sculpture of a skull. It's not a real skull that we know of. All right, let's hit this a little heavier right here. I want to get that to really sing in this. Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah, that's nice. I hit this jaw a little harder. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Don't clip that audio out of context, please. That would be very inappropriate. Yeah, so I'm just thinking about it like a sphere, right? Like, how do we get the highlights to feel like they're pushing that kind of spherical nature going on? I find metal to be fairly easy to render, depending on the type, though. Like if you get there's some very specific kinds of metal and looks that can be a real pain to get right. Particularly like when it's very aged and there's a lot of weird oxidation going on, and sometimes you get this almost like a dusty um, inverse shading in the cracks and crevices. You get this like well, in ZBrush they'd call it like a cavity map, right? Where you get this weird sort of like lighter element in the cracks, and that stuff can be a little weird to paint. You gotta definitely be looking at some reference, I think, to dial that in. But if it's a typical shiny metal, I don't I don't usually find that super challenging. But then again, I've rendered a lot of metal things. I mean, most of the projects that I've worked on in my career are dark fantasy or just fantasy projects. So a lot of rendering metal, just a lot, which is fine. I love that stuff. Okay. I kind of amped it up and now I'm turning it back down again. I'm really flip flopping on this. I apologize for the back and forth, but I'm kind of just making sure that it doesn't feel out of sync with the dim ambient lighting that we have going on. All right, so hourglass. So I think that we're nearing the end of this piece finally, right? Seems like it's taken a while with this guy, but we were just taking it slow, having fun with it, and I'm glad we did because I'm definitely liking what's going on here. Um, but we can kind of start to imagine all of the steps that are left, right? There's not a lot of steps here remaining. There's the hourglass glass. Um, Maybe I should just say there's the hourglass that needs to be rendered, which will be fun. And then there's the additional rim lighting that we want to bring in, and then there's any kind of glowing effects that we want to have, and then maybe just some sort of final tuning, adjusting maybe some colors and stuff. Maybe a little more of extra variation here and there. Maybe the leaves might need a little bit of variance. They feel a little too similar right now. I think maybe we want some a little lighter, some a little darker. But those are kind of the things remaining for the piece. So I feel like in the next stream next week we'll be able to wrap this guy up and start contemplating the next character. But I think I know who's next, so I'll share that with you guys in the next stream. We've got a few minutes left here, so I'm going to keep tinkering. But I just kind of wanted to give some kind of concluding thoughts for the stream here on where we're headed next and just a few things that we have left to do on this guy. Okay, so I'm going to do the glass highlights on their own layer. They could go on a layer I already have, but because the glass feels kind of special, I sort of want to address this on its own layer. So that is what we will do. Now, the first thing we've got to get is just the shape to read. We want to get this outer shape to read. And so we're going to kind of do like, kind of almost like an inverse ambient occlusion here to get this glass reading. But one of the things you can kind of think about is as glass curves away from the viewer, you start to see it's kind of hard to explain, but think about the surface of the glass being reflective, right? And when you look at the front side of it here, the reflection is unwarped, right? You're sort of looking at it facing the direction that the reflection is hitting the glass. So the reflection is undistorted from the front. But as we look at the side of it, as the glass bends away from us, we start to see kind of like a warped and compressed version of the reflection. And that compressed version also compresses the light. So you get this kind of buildup of highlights in the edges of things. So uh, it's a good sort of general approach here is to sort of halo the glass to start to give that effect. Now we'll dial it in, of course, more, but this is a really good kind of starting place here. And the bottom here is a little trickier because it's flat. So I'm going to try to give it a little bit of an edge there. And we can play around with maybe like a little bit of a diagonal highlight there to kind of help sell that. Uh, a little bit of what we're doing here is approximated reflections, right? Like we're not going to imagine, okay, if you took this scene and you actually like rendered it in a panoramic view and then wrapped it around the glass, like we're not going to do that, right? It's too crazy. It's too time consuming, and it isn't necessarily needed. Like you can get a lot of what you need with just the right sort of feeling patterns on these surfaces. So we're going to go for that first, and we'll evaluate if we feel like that's doing everything we need, and if it's not, then we can try to push it further. Some of these angles are really, really tricky here. But that's kind of the fun challenge of it, right? Like I don't know that I've ever painted hourglasses in this many angles before. Like definitely painted hourglasses before, but I don't know that I've tried to do an image with all of these tilting in all these various angles. So that's kind of cool. Um, I'm gonna do a little highlight along the edge there, just so we feel that shape a little bit more, and then maybe we go. There's a highlight of this cloak behind here, which is making it a little tricky to do what I want to do. Do we go opposing? Yeah, maybe we go for an opposing diagonal here. You know what? Let's see if we can do. See if we can do one of these guys. Let's go from the. Nope, nope. Let's go from this edge. Yeah, 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 yeah. There we go. Okay, and then I'll kind of do a little bit of a diagonal. Mm, nope, nope. I want to go this way. Yep. Okay. Yeah. See, it's just kind of like finding the shapes that feel like they're communicating correctly. There's a little bit of a perspective problem with that hourglass. We drew all these manually. We didn't use 3D for these, so it's just the reality of doing this by hand is that there might be a little bit of tweaks needed to get them to be feeling correct. All right. Okay, so that was the trick we used down there. I think we can use that trick again down here. We did kind of like a little bit of like a bounce reflection there. Then we indicated a little extra reflection there. That angle seems a little wrong on that one. Let's go. Let's go this way. Ew. Okay, I kind of like it offset there. Mm. And the next question you might have is, well, what's going to go inside the hourglasses? And that's the thing we're going to be kind of playing with is a little bit of maybe ethereal, glowing magic. And try to be subtle about it. We'll see how effective it is. kind of fun seeing some of this stuff come together that we've been staring at as just suggested lines for the longest time. Now, some of these are going to be getting hit with some pretty strong rim lighting from some direction, probably up here somewhere. So, or, up here somewhere. So that'll have to get factored in. I'm just doing kind of like a base, just so we make sure that the shape reads. All right. So we kind of blocked that in subtle, but I can dupe it now and we can really push the strength of that, which is nice. I think that's going to be important. So we get that to read really well. I'll label this as hourglass underscore reflections. Okay, great. I want to adjust the shadow underneath the character. It's really bugging me. Let's see. Like he just looks like he's floating right now. I'll finesse this a little more, but at least we got him feeling like he's connected to the ground. Okay, we're a little over time. Man, I'm thinking about what's left, and I'm thinking, do we just go a little longer, and do we just try to finish this? I don't want to rush it. We've spent a long time trying to make this look decent, and I don't want to try to squeeze it in. Um, but I feel like the segmentation of the streams might be weird if well, maybe it's fine. Maybe it's fine if next stream we end next stream. Now it feels weird though, right? Because usually I do. Oh, I forgot an hourglass down here. Holy crap. Okay, well, that's definitely something we need to do. What I was going to say is, I usually, for a new design, I start with a little story time for the episode, right? Of which episode we're working with. And it'll feel weird if I do that in the middle of next stream, right? That'll feel kind of weird. I don't know if I want that. But what's the alternative, right? The alternative is we have to squeeze in everything right now. And I just don't, I think there's a little too much still to be done. There's a little too much finessing that I'd like to do to this. With the rim lighting needs some attention, and we need got to play with some glowing effects. I think it just has to be next stream, because I think there's more than like 20 minutes of stuff here. I think there's probably like an hour of stuff. So I don't know. Maybe that does feel next stream. I'm not going to worry about it. We're just gonna have fun with it, and the goal is to just make stuff look cool, right? So let's just keep that in focus. But I'll be prepared with another episode and another redesign if we finish this guy before the end of next stream. So that'll be the plan. But yeah, otherwise, thanks for joining me, guys. Hopefully, you had some fun hanging out for a bit, and I hope you've got some cool creative stuff finished on your end. But otherwise, that'll be a wrap. And Last bit, I always forget to do this, but some plugs. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitch or sub to my YouTube channel. If you sub to the YouTube channel, I have a free drawing guide that you can get to if you go to the I guess what do they call that? The posts or the community section of YouTube. You go to the channel and you click. There's a tab for posts that the channel makes. Go there. There's a link, and in there, when you click the link, it'll take you to the drawing guide. Uh, it is a guide that is intended for, I would say, intermediate artists. Um, it's not going to be something like, let's draw a box together. It's more like you're already kind of on the path and you just want some exercises that you can sort of repeat to get a lot of value out of practicing. That's the goal, and the guide is called Sketch Saga, and I've had some pretty positive reviews of it already from people trying it. So I'm really happy to share it with other people. And if you try it, definitely let me know what you think. Otherwise, take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.